Dr. Sampson is clearly one of those people who has his feet in the real world, even though he's in the academy. And he's always had a passion and a commitment to providing access to career services, so I look forward to having him share his talk with us today. Welcome, Jim.
Well, thank you, Janet. That was my best introduction, I think, to date. Things have already started well here because the applause when I started was very modest. And what my outcome measure for presentations is that you take the entry-level applause and you take the final applause and you subtract the polite, oh yes, here he is, from when I'm done. So that's how I know how well I've done. So already, you know, we look from a measurement standpoint, the initial data was so small, I am bound to win in this really no matter what. And I'm slightly worried as to why the right side of the room seems to be so popular. But you know, every group is different. Yeah. Arnie, are you suggesting that I should try to imagine what other people's situations and needs are as a counseling? You know, I think that's I think I will take that to heart, yes. Well, thank you very much, Scott, and the organizing committee for inviting me to come for this. This is really important. This is the third in a series of talks. It started with a talk in NCDA back 5 years ago or something like that, and then one in Uvascula at IAVG. And so this is really you have to look at the three talks all together. So I'm really trying to keep a theme going of figuring out about access. Are we really being responsible in the way that we're providing access to services? And the way I want to look at this particular one is supply and demand of career interventions as a social justice issue. I think social justice has become a powerful force in our field, and it's become a bit of a buzzword, but I'm concerned if we really understand what social justice is, and also to understand what is our part to play in social justice. Are we, in the way that we do our work, are we promoting social justice, or are we promoting social injustice? And that's the kind of theme, is to ask us some hard questions about the way in which we do our work and the way we influence access to our services. Is that making the people that we have said so passionately that we want to help reach out to and make a difference in their lives to help them cope with the social injustice that they have? Are we maybe inadvertently doing something to promote social injustice? And so that's been the theme of these three papers. I'm here today as the talkative one of a group of four, and my three co-authors are here, who I'd like to introduce. Bob Reardon, who's there, who said he was willing to somehow indicate who he was to the group and raise his hand. Yes. MC McLean, and she's here. Yes, and she's more shy. We'll see how well Susie Moosh does with her hand raising. Oh, yeah. Ah, well. But a great group of colleagues. What the hallmark of the FSU group has always been collaboration and teamwork and working together, and this paper is really an example of that. Also want to thank Marion Westgate, who has been so helpful in me pulling all this together. I have a thesis with this, and that's that equal access to society's resources is a social justice issue. And vocational psychology and the career services that we provide is one of those important resources in society. If we look at career interventions, one common denominator for all career interventions, regardless of the theory that guides practice, is time. Very simply, more time-consuming interventions reduce the supply of career services, while less time-consuming interventions increase the supply of services available. Doesn't make any difference what theory it is. It all boils down to time. Anytime I get a chance to speak, I always work the same line into every speech now, pretty much, on this topic, because I'm like David Bluestein. I'm getting to be passionate, I think, as I get older, as he said yesterday, and that is, who are we responsible for as career practitioners? Are we responsible only for the clients who come through the door, or are we responsible for the citizens in our society who need help with career choices? And I think that's a fundamental question. What is the scope of our responsibility? And, you know, FSU's had in 5 years, we've had a $105 million budget cut, which is pretty tough to sustain. And so when we get together in groups like this and we complain about the reduction in services, you know, we have less money. And, you know, we blame these policymakers, these people on the dark side, you know, that are these bad people that are reducing the money available. Is it possible that we ourselves play a part in reducing the availability of services? Is it always somebody else's fault that we don't have the number of counselors that we want to have, or we don't have the amount of services? I want us to take a hard look at ourselves in this regard. So anyway, you have a paper in front of you. I'm not going to read the paper, because I did, and it took longer than 25 minutes. So I decided that was a no-go option. So you have the paper that you can read, and I'm going to hit some highlights from it. But essentially the original idea was we were looking at supply and demand data. We were going to look at a university of 15,000 students and a one-stop career center in a town of 100,000 people, and actually calculate out with all the supply and demand data. It's just that the amount of actual supply data that we have is very, very limited. We don't know how many counselors there are in the United States. We don't know how many places there are that provide services. It is really a kind of a rough guess. So the approach we took then was to develop these two hypothetical career services, and then we're going to look at how time and the way we design our services influences access to those services. But a few brief comments about some general things on the demand for college career services. A recent NACE study revealed that while counseling by appointment decreased by 25% over recent years, there was a sizable increase in drop-in career counseling and online counseling available. If we look at the community career services, and if we look at the new Harris data that we got from NCDA, that indicated that Americans would benefit from working with a career counselor. Specifically, 21% stated needing help in making career plans or obtaining a job. In comparison to the 1999 Harris poll, that means a 16% increase in adults desiring career assistance in selecting, changing, or getting a job. Additionally, 61% indicated they would seek assistance from a counselor at their place of employment, which was a 22% increase since 1999. Well, in the United States, there are 298,362,973 people. 21% of that number. This is our client base for the next year. Is 62,656,224 people. How many members are there in the Society of Vocational Psychology? How many licensed psychologists are there in the United States? How many licensed counselors are there? How in the world are we going to meet the needs of this many people that are telling us that they want our help? Well, if we look at the supply side of the equation, if we look at college career services, the NACE respondents in that study indicated that career counseling by appointment had declined in the past year, but drop-in services has increased by 25%. Smaller schools were more likely to provide academic counseling through career services than large schools, but larger schools were more likely to provide 4-credit career courses. In summary, the NACE benchmarking survey revealed increased demand for services from students and alumni, but this work was accomplished with fewer resources. So increasing demand, fewer resources is a theme throughout all of this. In this paper, we focus our analysis on colleges with 15,000 students. The NACE respondents in the enrollment from the $10,000 to $20,000 band said that career counseling by appointment was offered by 98% of those respondents, dropping counseling by 76% of the respondents, and online counseling was provided by 62%. So we're doing distance counseling in 62% of the career services in the United States. If we look at the supply of career services in the public sector and one-stop career centers, we find core services that are available for anyone who comes in. For people who don't get a job on the basis of those core services, we have intensive services. For people who still struggle, there are more training intensive services for those folks on those three levels. Wagner-Pizer data provide a considerable amount of information regarding one-stop career center usage. These data show that the total number of clients who registered with one-stop career centers in the U.S. in 2009 was 22,447,124 people, compared to 14 million in 2004. That's a 63% increase in demand in a 6-year period. Unemployment rate in the United States is 10.1%. So these figures are already out of date. If we look at the demand for our services is skyrocketing. The number of counselors is not keeping pace with that. Okay, so what did we do to try to better understand this? So hopefully you've got our paper in front of you, because we're going to take a look at a couple of tables. First of all, we have to take a look at how career services are organized. You have career services in counseling centers. I've worked in a counseling center, and I've worked in a career center. So we have career services in counseling centers, career services, and this analysis merges all of that together. It doesn't make any difference from a policy perspective where these interventions are provided. What is important is the supply of effective career interventions in relation to the demand. The same is true of one-stop centers. We have different lead partners. In some cases, the one-stop center lead partner is the employment service. In the other case, it's job training or it's a community college. From a policy perspective, it doesn't make any difference who the lead partner is. It goes back to the supply of effective career interventions in relationship to the demand. The same thing is true of theory. We have a wide range of theories that guide our perspective. But policymakers don't care what theories we use. All they care about is how many people do I have out of work and what capacity do I have to be able to help those people. So, if we take a look at the way we've calculated this analysis, we really went into the kind of the nitty-gritty, the practical details of delivering services, and we've made some assumptions, and you can challenge us on the assumptions. That's fine, but the data, the trends in the data, I think are still clear. And that is that not in a service delivery operation, you don't see clients all the time. So we calculated a 40-hour week on this. Each of the staffing models in Table 1 have 8 staff members in this hypothetical career service working 40 hours per week. Individual staff members vary in the amount of time they have available to deliver career interventions due to other administrative and programmatic duties. Staff members average 22 hours per week in delivering career interventions. Now you might think, well, that seems a little low. It's probably a little high. I don't know how many of you have actually worked in career centers or have worked in counseling centers, the other programmatic duties, staff meetings, other things that you have to do. My caseload at Georgia Tech was usually 15 to 20. 20 was on the high side for the number of individual clients I saw every week. So this is pretty close. And so that calculates out to about 774 hours per week available for direct client services. In the table 2, which is the one-stop center, we've got 15 staff members working 40 hours a week in that particular analysis. Now, we have to adjust the data by repeat visits because some clients get more than one type of service. You come for individual counseling and they recommend the resume workshop. Okay, so you're a single person, but you're a repeat visitor. Okay, or you come to a workshop and someone says, well, you know, you ought to come by for the drop-in counseling, for our drop-in services, because this is the resume workshop, but you can have someone do a resume critique for you and be able to see what what's going on with that. So we adjust the analysis by 25% to account for repeat visits with this. Okay, so if you have the table 1 in front of you, and for those of you that are watching this, this paper is available as well as the other papers are available on, or will be available on the website for this conference. So if you look at the left-hand side of the table, what you'll see is the interventions, individual counseling, face-to-face individual counseling at a distance, brief drop-in assistance, face-to-face drop-in assistance where someone's on a website, you're on the telephone helping them use the website and working that through with them. Group counseling workshops, career courses face-to-face, career courses at a distance, and self-help work in a career library. And then in each of the columns you have the 3 staffing models. Staffing model number 1 was pretty much reasonably close to the traditional counseling center model. Okay, it's basically individual counseling, an average of 3 sessions. We talk about, you know, 3 sessions in a cloud of dust as being wrong, you know, not John Kreit's famous statement. But still, if you look, our best estimate about the average number of sessions related to career counseling is about 3 individual sessions in a traditional mode. You've got a group. Actually, the group and the workshop interventions are common across all 3 models. We assumed that there was no difference there. The differences between between model 1 and 2 is that in model 2, we do screening to meet needs. So in this particular model, this differentiated service delivery model that you've got references for in the paper, essentially when someone comes in, they don't just get an appointment. They get a screening interview where a needs assessment is undertaken. And if the person, in fact, is really struggling, very low readiness, we just had a client who was actively suicidal in our career center, and we didn't suggest a self-help for her. You know, so individuals that clearly have substantial needs, they're referred to individual counseling. Most of the people that we see, and we've used this model in other countries around the world and other institutions, are helped right away. It's drop in, you know, you've got a concern, you're trying to, you know, changing a major, or you're out of a job, and we'll say, great, let's start right now. And we've got staff, you may wait a few minutes, but we've got staff actually working out in our career center. I can see you 15 minutes, I can see you 2.5 hours as you work through various things. It's a much more flexible service delivery model. So in Model 2, most of the services are delivered according to this drop-in method. The individual counseling is different, though, than in Model 1, because our individual counseling is an average of 5 sessions. Because the idea is that you have clients with real mental health and career issues. I mean, John Krumboltz is here with us today, and he's written eloquently about the fact that you can't separate career and mental health counseling. You really can't. It's all integrated. Well, when you reserve counseling for people who are really struggling, well, then 3 sessions will never do it. And so, you know, we'll, in our current service delivery, we may end up keeping some clients 4 or 5 months over time. So the average on this is 5 sessions to deal with the integrated mental health career issues. You have an immigrant who's homeless. We had this one of our clients one time. An immigrant, she was homeless and she was pregnant. 3 sessions? I don't think so. You know, we needed a lot more time. So this model is intensive on the individual counseling, but less of it, because people are pre-screened in and out of it. In the staffing model also, there is self-help, and we actually do have staff, like I did when I was at the Career Center at University of Florida, in the career library, and we can answer questions for people, help people find things. So that is available. The difference between staffing models 2 and 3 are the distance counseling. Tony Watts and Gareth Dent have done some really good work on distance counseling, and also have written the definitive piece on productivity in counseling in the British Journal of Guidance and Counseling in 2006, which I would highly recommend you take a look at that. But the difference between staffing models 2 and 3 is the models are exactly the same. It's just that some of the counseling is provided at a distance and some of the instruction is provided at a distance in Model 3. You know, we have counselors sitting in their office with a headset on, and they're doing distance counseling for people that either because of disabilities or other reasons that find it hard to come in. We can serve them. So when you look at the numbers down below, you see quite a dramatic difference. I could actually, my numbers of hours availability of service are pretty much the same, but the total persons served by Model 1, the traditional model, is 3,567 clients, students, and the second model, that's 5,830 students. That's quite a difference. Well, let's take a look at the second, your table 2. It's structured exactly the same way. It's been tweaked to be more congruent for a one-stop center, but the same process holds true. Model 1 is a traditional model. Model 2 is the differentiated service delivery model, where people are pre-screened, still has individual counseling, longer length of time. For those of you that are really familiar with one-stop centers, you'd look at this and say, you know, I don't know if we're going to be able to have this much time in one-stop centers to deliver this kind of service. Well, this is an optimistic viewpoint. I would admit that. Now, if you want to argue with the assumptions built into this or the numbers, that's fine. But just look at it. Look at your own services according to how many counselors do we have, and what capacity do we have to meet the needs that are out there. So it ends up with in staffing models 2 and 3, a 63% increase in the number of peoples served. In table 2, in the one-stop, it ends up with a 60% increase over people being served. Okay, well, what do we do about this? Well, there's kind of 3 ways you can think about this, 3 possible options. One is don't worry about it, because the not-for-profit sector will solve all problems. In our country today, part of our debate is that we don't need to worry about providing public services because charitable services suck everything up and they provide everything else. So if we don't have it in the public side, then we can donate money and charities will do it. Well, the problem with that idea is that charities are under the same problem that we're under. Public sector organizations are decreased in funding. Not-for-profit organizations have been cut. People are donating less money. Where's the money going to come from for the not-for-profit sector to pick up on this demand? Well, another one, the magical bullet is the internet. So you could say, well, I can still keep providing my rather expensive one-on-one counseling because people can just get on the internet like it's some kind of a magical answer. Well, there's 2 problems with that. Steve Brown is here somewhere. I think there he is in the back. Steve did some really good research looking at this issue and found that self-help interventions were effective, but less so than other interventions. Well, why is that true? Well, Steve and I have talked a little bit about this, and I'm pretty convinced that the self-help interventions are just as effective as other interventions if you have the right people in them. If you pre-screen people to know that they're ready to work on their own, they have enough career maturity, they have enough vocational identity that they can do that, then we're fine. So the self-help interventions simply are not going to work in the internet. The other reason is that from a social justice standpoint, people don't have access to the internet. It's a myth to think that people who are living in poverty have easy access to a computer. It simply doesn't happen. So we're further marginalizing this group in our society. So what do I think is a better option is this differentiated service delivery model, models 2 and 3. Implications for practice. One serious implication for practice is if you're in an area with a recently high degree of unemployment, the amount of individualized intensive interventions have to go up. If you're in a college with a lot of at-risk students, you're going to have to adjust. You can't, one size does not fit all in this. Implications for public policy, I think we've got to arrange our funding sources to where we reinforce, and this is a hard lesson for us, but in my current position, I'm coming around to think that, you know, we have to make incentives for people. And so I think if I were a policymaker and if I were in charge, I'd come back to you as a group and I would say, well, you seem to have difficulty in meeting demand. Let me set up a funding structure that rewards you serving larger numbers of people. Okay? That's the carrot, you know, and I think that we need to have some funding for experimenting with these differentiated models and serving more people and making sure we get people's needs met. That's the carrot. The stick is if you were watching the number of people you serve, and if you continue to serve a tiny fraction of the people who need it, your funding is not going to, we'll invest our public dollars in other ways. For the theorists in the audience, I think we really need to examine how our theoretical interventions can be translated into more workbooks, more computer interventions we can put online so that we can take advantage of the richness and the quality of these theories. I think we've got some outstanding career theories, but translating them into practice where people can have the resources for them, I think, is clearly an idea that we need to work on. Implications for future research. It's shocking how little we know about our field, about the number of counselors that we have out there and what they do. We need to understand that better, and we need to follow up on Sue Wiston's comment about cost effectiveness. We really need to look at the cost effectiveness of these interventions. So, to conclude, as a result of the worldwide recession that began in 2008, expenditures for public services have steadily declined. Reduced expenditures for delivering career interventions in universities and one-stop centers might be acceptable if the demand for interventions was decreasing at a similar rate. Unfortunately, this is not the case. Data on the demand for career interventions in higher education, as well as data on the demand from the general public, indicate that the reverse is actually true. Demand for career services increases in times of economic distress. It is a veritable perfect storm, with funding decreasing as demand is rising. A further unfortunate circumstance is that the negative consequence of reduced access to career interventions have a disproportionate impact in our society. The most affluent members of society can afford to simply purchase whatever career services they need. Less affluent members of our society, who are more often a victim of social injustice to begin with, do not have the financial resources to purchase career services if they are not publicly available. Those who are behind slip farther behind. A substantive commitment to addressing social injustice requires that we make better use of the limited staff resources that we have. Young people and adults are clearly telling us that they need our help. Our response to them as career service providers will indicate how serious we really are about dealing with social injustice. Thank you.